Good morning. Good morning. Welcome to Takeover Tuesdays. I'm your host, Jessica Springs. Hoping you're having a good start to your morning. You guys know I'm always excited for Takeover Tuesdays because it's Takeover Tuesdays and we always have a phenomenal guest. We always learn something new and learn about a small business. So I am just excited to be here this morning. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce our special guest for this morning. Her name is Jacqueline Lombardi, and she is the owner of Larimer Catering. Good morning, Jacqueline.
Morning. How are you?
I'm fantastic. I'm excited to be here with you today. How
Thank
are you
you.
doing this morning?
I'm doing great. Doing great.
Good, good. Well, Jacqueline, you know why you're here. we definitely want to talk about you first and then get
Okay.
into your business. So
Sure.
we're just going to jump right in as we
All right.
always do.
Mhm.
Give us some background. Give us some information about your background. Tell us about yourself.
Well, I was born and raised in San Francisco and then the suburbs of San Francisco, California for mm, probably half of my life. And born, I'm a first generation Filipino American. And my parents came over. My mother came over when she was kind of high school age, and with my grandfather and grandmother. And my grandfather was in the U.S. Army, and my mother and father met because my both of my grandfathers were in the army, and they were friends. So that's how they met. And I've got one younger brother, and he is. Bank CEO in California. I moved here with my then fiance, who's now my husband, because he had a job opportunity with a small telecommunications company. I thought that I was going to live and die in San Francisco. And I said, well, I guess if you're going to move me to another state, Denver is as good as any. And so I think once we moved here, oops, oops, I'm so sorry.
You're okay.
Oh, I thought I muted all that. Sorry. So, excuse me. So I didn't have any friends out here. He moved out here and he had a collection of friends already, his work friends. So I saw this commercial on TV at the time for the Art Institute, and I'd always enjoyed cooking. It's My grandmother was my primary caretaker when I was younger, so she always cooked for the family. So she cooked and had breakfast ready for my parents when they dropped me off. She was my daycare lady, and I watched her cook Filipino food all day long. And she had food ready when my parents came to pick me up, so they never really had to cook breakfast or dinner for quite a while. But I watched her, and I recall the first thing that we made together were the peanut butter cookies. And I was able to do the fork thing with the peanut butter cookies. So after that, I just kind of watched her, and I really loved cooking. I didn't know that I had no idea that that was going to be something that I was going to do professionally until we came out here and I saw the ad for the school. And I told my husband, I think, I want to go to culinary school. So I went there and did a walkthrough and enrolled. And after that, one of my teachers, my chef instructors, said, I've got a job opportunity for you. He's an old school buddy of mine from culinary school, and he needs somebody to work the pantry. And so that's how I got into like cooking in an actual kitchen. So it was through culinary school, and I went through the ranks. And after a while, I couldn't go any further. I became executive sous chef there at this private dining club down in Greenwood Village. And I didn't want to go any further. I didn't want to stay there in that world. And so later on, my husband and I decided to, we decided to, I don't know why, but a friend of mine said, I'm a vegan, and I wish that the cheesecakes look so good, and I wish that I could eat them, but I'm a vegan. And so I just started experimenting at home. We opened a tofu cheesecake company. I think it was before its time. So that didn't work out, but we were in a commissary, and the owner of the commissary had this small catering company, but he owned the commissary. So it was just kind of a side business for him. I started working for him. He sold the commissary, and I took over his little catering company. He just did pretty much box lunches. And my husband was kind of the front person. He went out and sold. He went to all the big buildings downtown and, you know, got appointments for tastings. And so I got a lot of my corporate customers through my husband. Then when we built it up, he said, I've got to go back to the telecom world. He said, this world isn't for me. So I took over, and he was kind of just the admin person. So did like a lot of the accounting, and I was operational. So I took over the kitchen, but now it's evolved, and it just so happens I did not plan it this way because I used to have men working for me, but I've got, my company is, minority woman owned, and it's operated by pretty much all my full-time workers are minority women. So that's just how it happened. I didn't plan it at all that way, but so there we are. That's a little bit about me.
Yeah, I love it. Thank you for sharing, because
Sure.
it's nice to hear the progression of everything, of how everything started out, and
Yeah.
you know how it's going at the moment. And I love that even though you didn't plan it that way, I mean, who can complain about having women and minority women in business with you and working with you?
Yes.
That's a good
And
thing.
I know. I found that they were, I don't know why it is, but, and it's this way in life as well. I found men, they tend to toss instructions. They don't like to read instructions. I know that you probably, you know, you've experienced that before with other people. And it's just with men. I mean, we women tend to read a recipe, or we read everything. I'm really, really anal about prep lists. And I learned that from my very first boss, executive chef. He used to make prep lists for everything, you know, so a recipe down to each part of the recipe. So if you're going to make a soup, before you made the soup, you had to make the stock. And this is what you need to do for the stock. Then you put that stock to work in the actual soup. So I learned that, and I took that with me. That was one of my big takeaways from that first job, is making prep lists. And I found that making prep lists works for me because the day of prep in the kitchen, people are coming at you with all kinds of questions. And these are things that I've been able to look at the night before. And I always say, and it was always to the men who worked for me, I said, well, I don't know. Did you read the prep list? And they, well, no. I said, well, you know what? If you read the prep list, you would know exactly what you're supposed to do now. And I don't have that problem really with the women who work for me. If they're confused about an item that I've put on the prep list, they'll come and question it. But other than that, you know, I just find that they are just better workers, and they're more detail oriented. And I'm not saying, I'm not dissing guys at all, but I just found, you know, it's worked for me. I having an all woman crew.
Yeah, I mean, it makes sense. I'm not gonna, I agree with you. No diss to men, but all the characteristics that you shared are definitely, I'd have to be in agreement with you.
Yeah.
So speaking of your staff, how big is the team? How many of their?
In the kitchen, I've got 3 gals that work for me full time. And then it's been a little bit difficult just because of the year that we've been through. But then I have a bunch of part-time people that I call on for if I need bartenders, wait staff, or extra help in the kitchen. So they're not full-time, but the gals that I have they are work mules, and they are awesome. So, I mean, they can probably do together, the 3 of them, in an 8-hour day can do probably equivalent to about 6 people, just because they're so good at, you know, and they they know what's going on in my head because they worked for me for so long that they know exactly. I can abbreviate things on a prep list for them and they'll know exactly what I'm talking about. But like I said, we are starting to get a little bit busier. I've started getting more calls and emails for quotes for weddings coming up. We're doing some sit down graduation dinners now that more and more people are getting vaccinated. I think people are starting to go, some people are going back to the office. We're still having for corporate catering. They've still got skeleton crews in the offices now. Maybe some of the admins are going in, but they're starting to order from us again. We've had to change up the way we do catering for office buildings, but it's slowly but surely going back to the way it used to be. So they're just happy. Everybody's happy to just be working.
Yeah, absolutely. And when you mentioned you've had to change things up a bit in the office buildings, can you talk about that? What looks different now prior to COVID?
Well, the way we package things up. So, a lot of times we were bringing in our chafing dishes, setting everything up with linen tablecloths, and just coming in and putting everything together for them so they could just kind of walk through and help themselves. Now, of course, we've got to think about it a different way. There's no more we haven't been doing on-site service, so we package everything individually in like microwavable or foil containers, label them, and everything is something like that you can grab and go. So there's no kind of cross contamination, no same hands holding the tongs that somebody else held. So it's like that now. We just had to think outside the box, which is usually, the only thing we ever package were box lunches. We do a lot of those, so that kind of didn't change. But just the fact that people weren't ordering because they weren't going into the offices. But we did do a few like Zoom happy hours with people, and that's kind of a challenge because people live all over the place. So you have to individually package these like charcuterie platters, the just happy hour cheese and salami platters with crackers, and you individually package those up, and we've delivered them like all over the city, and people have them, put them in their fridge, and they take them out when they've got their happy hour, that afternoon at between 5 and 7 or something like that. So, it's just a different way of doing things. But, like I said, people are starting to get together, and we're starting to go into homes again, and doing private parties. So, it's been difficult. Just, just having to, just nobody, since I am predominantly a corporate caterer, that's my business model. I've had to go into, social private catering, which, I've done it before, but the most of the time when I did it was because they were already a corporate client. And so they called on me to do their social events. So, but we we jumped on that wagon like midpoint when when restaurants were doing when they started doing Grubhub and DoorDash, things like that. I said, well, let's just do like a featured meal of the week. And so we started doing that, and that's just our home delivery business. And we sometimes the menu, sometimes I strike it rich with the menus. People like it, and we get a bunch of orders that week. Sometimes we get maybe 2 or 3 orders in the week. So it's a hit or miss, but it's something that keeps my people in the kitchen outside of normal business. I just try to get them in the kitchen as often as I can. So, and luckily, we've had some good luck with the PPP and getting grants from the city, and so that's helped out a lot. So,
Yeah, you talk about the struggle, and I'm glad you brought that up because you've talked about the struggle a little bit. How has that impacted you financially with the way you do your process? Because as you mentioned, it sounds like it's, you know, a lot more labor intensive, and I know in that
Oh,
industry. So how is that impacting your employees and just the business in general?
well, they've adapted. I said, because you get um, kind of, it's like a muscle memory kind of thing, doing things one way. But I said, you know what? If you want to stay in business, this is what we have to do. So I've had to experiment with different types of packaging. So when we deliver, are they going to eat it right then and there, or are they going to put it in their fridge and reheat it? Now, most people won't heat up their ovens. They'll throw stuff in the microwave. So I had to get microwavable containers, and then so that's another thing with storage. Getting just a simple thing is getting some universal size that's going to do breakfasts, lunches, dinners, that kind of thing. Something that's not going to take up too much space, because when you buy something, you're hanging on to this inventory, and you just don't want to have all that excess inventory as well. So that we try to streamline it so that people are ordering like one thing. So I'm only buying chicken instead of chicken and beef and pork. Doing like I said, the featured meals sometimes, or people will order, we need a hot buffet now for 15, 20 people. And I'll just look at what we're serving already for the featured meal of the week. And I'll say, can you do this? And so trying to just watch the costs and not have too much inventory hanging around, and having to freeze everything. So we're trying to use up inventory as we buy it, so everything is always fresh and it's just not sitting around, and that kind of thing. And then also the delivery, where we're used to delivering things buffet style, so we're bringing the Schaefer's in and everything. Now we've had to buy hot boxes to keep the hot food, even though it's individually packaged, keep that hot food hot while we deliver. So it just little things like that that we've had to overcome. But it's a challenge, but somehow you work around it. I also work in a shared use commissary. So the resources are there. If you need extra help, or, luckily that my people, when we had days off and they wanted extra hours, I'm one of the only caterers there at the commissariat I'm in, and there are a bunch of food trucks. So, if my people, I'm happy if we're not working for them to make extra money working on food trucks part-time. We share resources. So if I've got a question about the way to package something, I'll talk to somebody else about it who already does that type of catering or food delivery, and we help each other out that way. So it's that's
I love that piece that you talk about sharing resources and collaboration, because for me, that has always been a big key thing in small business, even prior to COVID. So I think COVID just makes it that more and more important. But I think, in my opinion, that is a key component to running small business, is being able to collaborate and share resources. So I think that's huge when you bring that up.
Yeah, it's really nice. I mean, people have asked me a lot of times, have you ever thought about getting your own kitchen? And I said, I have, but just to start up to outfit my own kitchen is enormous. And also then I'd lose the resources, and the information, because there are people at the kitchen who have specialty foods, meals. We just did recently it was called a Mardi Gras in May. So it was in collaboration. A friend of mine owns an events company, and called Fresh Events. And so she does this event every year, but it's usually in a venue somewhere. And so she said, can you do it? And they also, the firm that we're doing it for is they want a minority owned business to cater it. And so she goes, I immediately thought about you. So Mardi Gras in May, Southern food is not my specialty. So I looked to one of the other people at the commissary who has a food truck called Crescent City Connection. And so I asked him, will you partner up with me on this? And we did a whole thing with, they got a choice of gumbo, jambalaya, or red beans and rice, and it was fantastic. Everybody loved the food. We did individual appetizer containers with like boudin balls and little nachitoches meat pies and things like that. So it's fun to collaborate with people, and I'm not afraid to share my knowledge. I don't throw it out there. I'm not one of those kind of people that says, if I were you, I would do it this way. I just kind of stay the course and do my own thing. If somebody asks me for advice, if somebody asks me to show them how to do something, a recipe or whatever, I'm happy to show people if they ask me. I've mentored a couple of they happen to be women, but there's another woman who she used to work out of our kitchen. She is Filipino as well, Filipino American, and her company's called The Taste of the Philippines. Well, she moved out to Chicago a couple of years ago, and her family was out of one of the suburbs of Chicago, and she wanted to be closer to her family, but she ended up opening up a little storefront there in the Chicago area. She's doing really well, but when I met her, she was doing Filipino food, and she kept on saying, my wrists hurt every night. And she said, I don't know why. And I said, well, and I used to work across the table from her and just watch her and didn't offer any advice or anything. And I said, well, can I show you something? And because she was just a home cook, this was her first venture into the food world. She was an accountant that had gotten laid off, and she decided she wanted to open up a little food cart. And so I said, let me show you how to hold the knife properly. And I said, she goes, it feels weird. I said, it feels weird because you've been doing it incorrectly. But I said, force yourself to use it this way. And she did this for a couple of days, and she was so thankful and so grateful to me. She said, my wrists don't hurt anymore. And as it turned out, I didn't know this, but she posted it on Facebook. And she always calls me mentor whenever she refers to me. And the person who is my executive sous chef now, she said, did you know that Kathy taught me how to use a knife properly? And she said, and she told me that you taught her. So it's kind of going down the line, and it makes me happy to know that I'm, helping people move along in their, in the field. So, I just keep passing it on, and I'm happy to do that. So.
Yes. And that, again, that's another, in my book, that's another key component to entrepreneurism and small business. Passing down that torch and skills and tools so that their businesses can thrive as well.
Yeah.
And so I have to say, we've been talking about the food, but we haven't we got to get into the specifics of what you serve. So what are you cooking up in the kitchen, and what is available with your catering company?
Oh, well, people ask me that all the time. I don't have a specific cuisine. I just kind of do, I've got a bunch of different menus in this head. And so a lot of it is on the website there. And, the items that are on the website are just a few of the things that we offer. So I don't like to, it's like reading a a Bible. If there's too many things, too many options, then people kind of go, I don't know what to choose from. So I put the best items that we sell on the menu. And then sometimes if something slows down, then I'll take it off and I'll put something else on. So if somebody asks me, for instance, like somebody asked me about the New Orleans cuisine, I will ask somebody else that I know whose specialty it is to please give me a hand. I'm not afraid to ask for help, but we do. If they say, well, it's an Italian theme, I will go through and I'll make up an Italian menu for them. Or believe it or not, Filipino cuisine is my least is the least knowledgeable field of cuisine. It's so weird because when we were growing up, my brother and myself, my parents wanted us to be so Americanized that they fed us American food while they ate Filipino. The only time I ever ate Filipino food was if I was with my grandmother and we went to a party where they served Filipino food, or if my grandmother cooked it. My parents made us hamburgers, they made us spaghetti, that. So we grew up Americanized, and it wasn't until I grew up that I asked my grandmother if I could watch her and learn from her how to do lumpia, which is the Filipino egg roll. And so I can do Filipino cuisine, and I can look now. The internet is awesome because I can look up pretty much any kind of recipe that I want and just kind of go through the different versions of it and then kind of make up my own version from pulling from this recipe, and just like the best parts of what I like about those recipes and come up with something. And if it works, then I write it down and I keep it in my recipe file. But I don't have a specialty. We can pretty much do whatever your theme is. If you've got a theme, I'll look up, or I will ask somebody who knows about that type of cuisine. So.
Well, yeah. Well, if I could just say, I love those Filipino egg rolls. Those are amazing. Yeah, I have my first experience with Filipino food was those egg rolls. So
yeah.
So you talked about, and before we go, I want to ask you two things. So you talked about on the menu, there's a couple things that you put up top that people order. So what are those famous popular things that people order from?
Oh, for like the hot entrees, people their chicken, because chicken is pretty neutral. Everybody likes chicken. So we've got a lot of chicken menus on there. So apricot ginger chicken is one of my it was something that I just made up. I said, hey, this sounds good, let's try doing this. And we had a bunch of dried apricots left over from some other thing that we did, and I said, well, I don't want these just sitting around. So I took some chicken breasts that were already thawed, and I kind of coated them with cardamom and cumin and sauteed them off in some really good olive oil. And then I rehydrated some dried apricots in white wine, and I ended up making a sauce out of it that tasted really, really good. So that became one of our really popular items. Another one is chicken with artichokes and sun-dried tomatoes and spinach. And people love that. They also ask me they say, can you just do something like spaghetti and meatballs? And I said, well, sure. We can definitely do that. It's just like sometimes I just don't put simple things like that on the menu because, because they are just simple. And so if it's something that I want to like the apricot ginger chicken, people say, I've never heard of that before. Well, let's give that a try. And so that has just become one of the more popular items. Of course, during the winter and the cold months, we get a lot of orders for just our beef stew. And that is, it's just a comfort food for people. Mm-hmm. And a lot of people just don't make it because it takes so long. So we kind of say, you got to give us like 48 hours if you want to have that, because that we have to let that simmer on the stove for a long period of time. But people like that. Meatloaf for some meatloaf, mashed potatoes, and gravy. People understand that. And we get a lot of orders for that. There are certain things that we get ordered in the winter time, and there are other things that we get ordered a lot when the summer months come by. So it all depends. It kind of the uh, ordering, the popularity kind of shifts with the seasons.
Yeah, that makes sense. And
Yeah.
speaking of meatloaf and all of that, that reminds me of childhood. So maybe it reminds others, because I grew up on that stuff in the winter months growing up in Colorado. So that's what that reminds me of. Well, okay, before we get out of here, two things that we have to get: your website, you mentioned it, but please share the name and we'll make sure and get it in the comments so folks can come back and go to your website.
Sure. It is just www.larimercatering.com. And, you can, if you want to contact us, there should be a link to, for an email address, and we'll get it. I get it directly, and I get a lot of, requests for quotes off of the website, actually. So, you can take a look on there. We've got breakfast items, box lunches, hot buffets, and they're pretty, I think they're pretty reasonably priced comparatively. Like I've kind of ghosted other people's websites, other caterers' websites in the past, just to see what comparables are. And I think for what we offer, I think we're pretty competitive. We're not, I mean, I'm not saying I lowball myself or anything like that, but it's, I think our prices are pretty reasonable.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Well, is there anything, Jacqueline, that we didn't share that you would like to share with our audience? Anything that you want to share about small business, yourself, anything?
I think that, Colorado is a great state for small businesses. I think I don't know how many startups there are, but I've gone to a lot of networking social gatherings, through the Denver Chamber of Commerce and Colorado Women's Chamber of Commerce, and this is a very pro small business state. So I just say, if you want to go for something is your passion, you should just research it, go to some online stuff, and see if it's something that might work for you. I mean, if you should be happy in what you do. And luckily I'm happy, and I love the people that work for me, the people that I work with. I think since I've got longevity in my employees, nobody's worked for me for less than 2 years. And in the cooking field, I think that says something. I try to be a good boss. I try to treat everybody the way I want to be treated. I know the way that I don't like to be treated in the workplace. So I try not to be that person. So I've worked with a lot of bosses who think that yelling and screaming is the way to get people's attention in the kitchen. I found that when somebody starts yelling and screaming at me, I shut it down immediately. So I try to make each mistake in the kitchen. When somebody makes a mistake in the kitchen, I try to make it turn into a teaching moment, and say, you know what, this is great that you tried it this way, but how about if we do it this way next time? And because I found that yelling at somebody doesn't do anything for them. And so treat people the way you want to be treated in the workplace. And I think you'll have happier employees.
I couldn't agree more, Jacqueline. That's great ending words. So on that note, if you're interested in Jacqueline's catering at Larimer Catering, please go to our website, larimercatering.com. Please reach out to her, check out the menu. As she mentioned, she can make anything. She's willing to do any themes. Sounds like her company loves to do anything.
Oh yeah. We
Yeah.
loved it. We love a challenge,
Yeah.
especially if it's something that we haven't tackled before. It's a lot of fun, trying to come up with recipes from somebody's background. I've missed this. My mother used to make this for me all the time, and I don't know if you can do this or not, but and so just give me the name of the recipe, and I'll research it. If I can do
Yeah.
it, I'll do it.
Yeah. I love it. Well, without further ado, we're going to have to sign off. Jacqueline, thank you so much. It was a pleasure talking with you, learning about you. Thank you for sharing your story and your time with us this morning. And for those of you out there, I know that hopefully this COVID stuff is kind of winding down. I know that we're still dealing and coping with it. So just thoughts go out to anybody still struggling with the ramifications of COVID. Definitely sending you good energy and continue to be well and stay inspired. This is Takeover Tuesdays. I'm your host, Jessica Springs. Until next time.
Thank you.
Thanks.
All right.